This is Paul Sanneman from Business Success Tips, where you can learn to make more money in less time and have more fun, specializing on the more fun part. I'm excited today because we have Mark Paskell from the Contractors Coaching Partnership, right? I got it right?
Yes.
I'm good. Sometimes I mess that up.
It's a mouthful.
It says what you do. Absolutely. I've known Mark for a while, and he's very good at what he does. I can say that for sure. I've known a lot of clients who work with him. He's really good at producing results. So I have him on the show today to give you some of his great insights he's learned after several years of doing this, right, Mark? So tell me a little about yourself, how you get into coaching and what it is you do and why people should listen to you in the first place.
Well, I started in the 80s in commercial contracting and some residential. And then in the 90s, I got a job at Sears Siding with Amory, 1991. We had a great year. And then a buddy of mine from high school asked me to open up a residential division within his union company in Worcester, Massachusetts. So we started right from the bottom. We started with roofing, siding, and windows. And in short order, we were up to 5 roofing crews. Everything was self-performed, and then we get into insurance work because I'm a public adjuster as well, and we ended up getting into remodeling. And truly, remodeling was much more interesting to me than roofing. But we ran two companies, a roofing, siding, window company, and a remodeling company. And we wanted to do it effectively, so we adopted the best practice of design, scope, develop, and build with the lead carpenter concept. And then after maybe 15, 16 years, in 2007, I decided it was time for me to put my shingle out and mentor others after I helped them build that business to about $8 million a year, $5 million remodeling, $3 million roofing, siding, windows. And I had a sales staff of 8-9 people. We had carpenters, and we did everything from the ground up. No subs. We did excavation, we did concrete. So I learned how to price remodeling jobs, scope them. I learned the code, became a licensed builder, got my license here in Massachusetts, and now I teach continuing ed for the licensed contractors in Massachusetts. And I picked up OSHA along the way. I'm an OSHA trainer as well. So all of these certifications and skill sets help me coach today's residential home builder, remodeler, tradesperson, be it roofing, siding, windows, and occasionally I get a few electricians and plumbers who also want to get some mentoring to help them improve their business outcomes.
So what have you found? Interesting, you started in 2007 because we all know what happened in 2008, right? If you were there.
In 1991, when I was with Sears Siding, we had the Bush recession from the savings and loans, no new taxes and all that, right? Mm-hmm. And Amory was the largest company in the country up until that time, doing $320 million. And I was selling in a recession. And, selling, if you're working with a good company and you do a good job for your customer, you can sell even when it's a recession. There's still work to be done.
Cool. So, Mark, what have you learned? You've worked with a lot of contractors, right, over the years. What do you think are their biggest problems that you've been able to solve?
Hands down, the biggest problem for most contractors, at least in the residential sphere that I focus in, I don't focus in commercial. I would say business savvy, knowing your numbers, knowing how to market, knowing how to sell, knowing how to set up systems. Yeah. So business education. A lot of them are great craftsmen, some of the best, you'd ever see, great guys and some ladies, but they're really, lacking on the business side. So,
Mark, how do you help someone make the transition from a craftsman to an entrepreneur, leader, and business person?
That's a great question. What I try to do is first, I do a little onboarding. I get to know them. And they have challenges. I'm not usually working with someone that just got out of high school or just started, the game. but they've been doing it 5, 6, 7 years, and they don't have good quality of life. They're losing money. And so what we start off with is, where do you want to go with this business? And some guys, believe it or not, I get them jobs. I actually get them jobs with clients, like several clients you've helped me hire people for. And then others, they want to do it. And so I sit down with them. I do one-on-one, mainly Zoom now. And what we do is we find out their goals, whether their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities and threats. That's a SWOT. And then we do a budget for them, because they gotta understand their numbers on what they really need to, run a job and also run overhead. And there should be a profit after all the bills are paid, including their salary, which should be an overhead. So
Right.
I get some guys, it takes, 6 months or less. And I got other guys that took 3, 4 years to get the confidence within themselves to really charge what they need to charge to have a viable business, and helping them learn how to sell effectively without being a salesperson. That's hard.
What do you mean by that? How do you sell effectively without being a salesperson?
So a mechanic, a great contractor, generally is great at what he does, believes in being transparent, sometimes showing all the numbers, if you will, but they don't know how to really figure the overhead and the net profit and the things necessary to run a business. So what I do is, they don't really want to be salespeople. And in my classes, that since 2010, we've trained 17,000 guys in different things: OSHA, RRP, business and continuing ed training in math. And most of them, they don't want to be a sales guy. Now, I've been a sales guy, but so what I have to do is help them feel comfortable in their own skin, selling a process. And by teaching them how to be okay in their own skin, but still being effective at knowing the basics of sales, I help them slowly gain confidence in their number, and they gain confidence in themselves.
Now, what happens when someone says, you say, well, you're selling it too cheap, and they go, well, if I charge more money, I can't get any work?
That's a really hard one to deal with some people. Some people just believe what they believe. But because of my vast background and being in many different organizations, I was also in Certified Contractors Network, and I was in NARI. I was president of the NARI chapter in Boston. By knowing a lot of different contractors, I'm able to, relate with these guys, and I have to slowly show them, based on empirical data of other people who have already done it, okay, that they're not the most expensive in town. And so by showing them, like, the top 500 or the Anderson Renewals, or the Power Remodeling, all these different companies that a lot of times are using markups as high as 2.0, when they see that it's way up here and they're way down here, I try to show them, in the middle, you could probably make a good living, but I got to help them get there. And
what if they say, well, I can't find enough people that can afford my services to keep it at that price?
So what we do is we identify what are the good markets in and around them. And a lot of people will say, well, no one will buy anything in my town. Okay, well, what about the next town or the next town? There's always good neighborhoods. So we do a marketing plan. We try to identify what is the type of work they want to do, what are they good at doing, and can they make money at it based on the resources that they have access to and their knowledge and experience. And then we craft out a plan. And
what does crafting out a plan look like?
Well, it could be as simple as, okay, what do you want? First, what do you want to earn for an income from your business? Secondly, we got to make sure there's profit in there for the rainy day and for capital improvements. And then we basically show them how they can properly estimate projects and win some projects if they have a basic sales strategy.
Mm-hmm. How do you help people find their leads? You ever mess with that
So,
stuff?
well, it starts with a website, but some guys, I actually work with some guys that are only doing $500,000 a year.
Wow.
And that's hard because they're not evolved yet. If I got a $3 or $4 million company, they already know all the answers sometimes. So sometimes I got to teach them to unlearn something to learn something proper.
Right.
But the little guy, if I can help him improve his business by a couple $100,000 or get him up to $1 million, right? I've changed his life. And I got to be willing to work with them and listen, give them experience, and teach them where to market. So everyone needs a website, and then it comes down to word of mouth, networking. I've run networking groups before.
Mm-hmm.
I teach them how to leverage their own inner circle and contacts that they might have never known about. And lastly, a lot of guys have people they've worked for many years, and they never contacted them after they did the job. So I have them call those people, and lo and behold, wow, you're still in business? I thought the economy killed you. No,
Right.
we got on the project. We lost your number. So teaching people how to do the basics of marketing, guerrilla marketing, is one of the things I really love to teach people to do. And for low ROI, we get them going. I help them, strategize on how to sell a job, and we build the business.
Well, give me maybe one of your, best case scenarios and worst case scenarios, right? Something you were incredibly successful with and someone that didn't work out so well, and why?
So, I guess the one that I'm probably the most proud of would be, without saying the company name, but Jason. Jason. One day he said, I need some help. He was in the CEU class, and he was taught that you got to have a minimum 50% markup from Sean McCadden, who was my mentor, and myself. Sean's now retired. And he said, I want to do some coaching. So we started, and he was at a very low rate. But every year he just kept getting better. So I worked with him. It was challenging at first, but he was a great carpenter, master carpenter. And the long and short of it is, he calls me one day and says, my wife is going to now work in the business full time, and I got to pay her over $75,000 a year plus benefits. I'm like, we got to up your number. And so she came in. She was a marketing person, and and Megan, Jason's wife, took over that end of the business. And today, Jason is just doing unbelievable design, scope, develop, and build. His net profit is probably double what most people get. Mm-hmm. And I can't share what it is, but it's amazing. And he's growing leaps and bounds. He's getting NARI Contractor of the Year awards every year. He's got 8 people now. He's done lead carpenter training with me. But it took 8 years for him to get to a level where he had a mentor from NARI who does over $20 million a year, be a NARI mentor coach, part of the organization. Right. And she said, how do you have such a high net profit? And she's, over 20 million a year, and she's in the single digits. And Jason said, it's my coach, Mark Paskell. He brought me along, so I felt comfortable along the way. And it's just, he's one of my best friends now too. In fact, he'll be a coach one day, just like us, Paul. And as far as worst case, I have a few people that I had to fire only because they weren't doing the work. They weren't being accountable to the program. They hired me. They asked me to hold them accountable. I did so. And yet they always came up with excuses. They just didn't do the work to work on their business acumen. And they fell into old ways. And it was like pushing a rope uphill. We get a few of those, and I wish them well, and maybe they'll come back in the future. but it's hard to work with someone who's just not going to do it, do the basics of business, and it's frustrating. So I onboard people first to see if I can get commitment that they really want to improve and be mentored and coached and held accountable, and then we work together.
Okay.
But the ones that break the promise 2 or 3 times, it's hard.
Yeah, it's sort of not worth your time, I think. Now, I always just ask questions sometimes. If you are in an airport, all right, meet a contractor, and guy says, well, I'm doing $3 million a year. I'm working 60 hours a week. I'm maybe making 100,000 a year on a good year. I don't have any time to spend with my kids and my wife. My employees aren't what they should be. I can't find good employees. I can't find good customers. You're this great mentor. I just saw you speak. I know we're going to be gone in 30 minutes, but what do you think I should do?
Well, if we have time at the airport, we'll probably go have a coffee.
Okay.
But I would ask first and foremost, how important is that family time and your family to you? I would ask that first. Because it's not worth going down the road of being a slave to your business and not being there for your wife and your kids, losing out on all the special times because life is so fast. How important is that to you? And would you be interested in learning how to follow best practices that are pretty well established in the industry? How important is it to you? Or do you want to
say he says that with my family, best practices are important, but he isn't going to sign up for any coaches at the moment. You just got to give him okay, this is the 30 minutes. If you can only do 3 things or whatever, just make sure you do this, this, and this. So we never see you again. These are the things you need to really get done.
Number 1, you got to know your numbers. If your numbers aren't in line with some of the basics across the industry, for instance, if you're not realizing a 9 to 10% net profit after all the bills are paid, your price is too low or your productivity has issues. So you got to know your numbers.
Okay.
And secondly, if you don't have enough good systems in place and you're doing all this heavy lifting, I would ask him, do you have an admin assistant who can do the paperwork at a lower rate than your rate? And third, I would say, what type of systems have you installed? Are you starting from scratch every time that you go run a lead and you do an estimate, or do you have some basic systems in place? Okay. So that can become redundant, but not waste a bunch of time.
So he would say, well, I don't have I'm only making 3%. I want to spend time with my wife and kids. What kind of systems are you talking about, and where do I find them?
So I call it the cradle to grave process, where it's like a four legs of a chair. First, you got to have a budget and a goal. Every business needs that, and it should be written down. Okay. Second, the 4 legs of a chair. It starts with the lead. The marketing, okay, that your company does has to produce a lead that matches your demographic and the type of lead that you want to work for, and you can make money doing work for that crowd. So working for tire kickers is hard. So we got to identify your target client. Second, the marketing department then turns over that lead to the sales department. So you need to have a sales process, a sales strategy to convert some of those leads from marketing into business. Then you need to be able to set up your file so that when you go to produce the work, the production leg now takes what you sold, right? You sold the dream, and now you got to build the dream. So having a proper handoff and system for that. And fourth, the fourth leg is admin. You need an admin department that's going to, measure and track and job costs and help with administrative tasks, because a business owner shouldn't be tasked with those tasks. You got to set it up. So it's the 4 legs of a chair, and having a cradle to grave workflow process clearly identified, and you're on your way.
Well, let's say, well, there's so much. I mean, there's QuickBooks, there's JobTread, Procore, CoConstruct, there's a lot of different softwares and processes out there. How do I find the one that's best for me?
Well, the first thing I'm going to say to you is don't waste your time and money trying to learn a new software if you don't have a business plan in place.
Okay.
So number one, you need to have a business plan, and it doesn't have to be anything that costs $100,000. I mean, you start with something basic, and you can use Excel. And QuickBooks is probably recommended. Have someone have an outsource your bookkeeping to a virtual assistant. I had one client who had 4 virtual assistants, and he had no one in his house because he worked out of his house, and his wife didn't want a woman in the house. But he had 4 virtual assistants, and everything was set up. And he's an area guy, winning Contractor of the Year awards. So you got to have I think a minimum know how to use Excel, right? So you can set up templates. Then if you want to migrate to an online solution, JobTread's great. Build-A-Trend is pretty predominant, but it's complicated. You gotta learn it. But basically, we all started out with the yellow pad.
Right.
And I took the yellow pad and put it on Lotus and then Excel. So I think you have to have the plan first, Paul.
So the plan is just like 10. So where do you find, how do I write a business plan? Is it 20 pages, 2 pages? You go on the internet or ask ChatGPT, how do I write a business plan? How do you do that?
If you don't want to bring a mentor or a coach in, or you don't want to pay someone to do it, you can actually go online. And if you spend some time, you'd be surprised what you find for the structure of a business plan. But if you bring in a mentor who knows the industry, see, I only work with residential contractors. A lot of the big coaches in America don't want to work with the residential contractor because there's not enough coin in it for them.
Right.
So I recommend that they bring in a guy like you or Ed or me or even Luke Berger, right? And work with a coach who's dedicated to the residential industry. Say, and for short money, you can get a basic business plan put together. It should only be 2-3 pages long. It doesn't have to be that long. The more complicated it is, the harder it is.
Right.
Right.
So I think there's even a website called the One Page Business Plan. I'm sure it's out there. And so you would recommend that people get a coach, and why is that?
If you look all across industries in America today, even it seems like everybody is on board with having a sounding board, having a mentor or somebody that they can run things by to validate things.
Mm-hmm.
But in the residential industry, I think it's so important because a lot of guys get into the trade with little or no business training, and they're good at what they do. They're great people, but they get killed when they start sitting down with savvy people who negotiate hard.
Mm-hmm.
So having the basics of business, I think is irreplaceable when you're starting a business. And residential, we're probably the most maligned industry in America. At least Harvard University said we're the most fragmented industry. Kermit Baker. So I just think it's imperative to have somebody who can help you navigate the way of being successful without being, making a ton of mistakes and trial and error. And before you know it, 10, 15 years go by. Now your wife has left you, or you got a drug problem or a drinking problem now because you can't handle it. We got the highest rate of suicide in America in our industry, and not having any time for your family and your kids, your friends, and yourself, it leads to burnout.
Yeah. I heard one guy say that, smart people learn from their mistakes and wise people learn from the mistakes of others.
Well said.
I think that's true. So,
well said.
So thank you. I appreciate your time. Mark, if people want to reach you, what's that process? How do they get in touch with you? And how do they initiate the conversation?
Well, I have a website, so it's the Contractor Coaching Partnership.com. And right there on the site, I have a nice story, an explanation of what we do. Or they can find me on LinkedIn at Mark Paskell, Paskell. I'm on Facebook. I'm easy to find, and my number is 508-847-0162.
Now, do you offer any kind of, introductory, if I want to just meet you, can you just talk to them for a while? You do that?
Yeah, yes, absolutely, Paul. I will spend, sometimes minimum a half an hour to an hour with somebody just to see if there's some chemistry between us, for sure.
Okay. Cool.
But then I try to go to a onboarding where they do a few sessions, and we can get to know each other better, and I learn the real problems that are behind the scenes. And then we can come up with a customized coaching program. Some guys, are really good at selling, but they stink at production. So I work on the production side. I try to augment what they already have.
Cool. Well, I would recommend that if you're not doing what you want to do and the way you want to do it, I would suggest you call Mark, because I'm sure he has some good advice. You have a lot more experience than a lot of coaches I've known. Been in this industry for a long time. You're also well respected because you're a member of all the organizations. You're in NAR. So I would say you're a leader and mentor in this industry. You've been doing it a long time, and so I would suggest you call Mark at least to find out what he has to offer.
Thanks, and thank you. You've helped a lot of my clients, Paul, hire people that they just didn't have the time to do it, and the headhunter didn't work.
Cool. Well, thank you for that. And I have to put it, don't forget to subscribe. My son always, don't forget to subscribe below for some more good information. And thanks, Mark. I really appreciate your time.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye. Bye, Jen.